YouTube, what is going on? Welcome back to the channel, and today we are going to be taking a look at my first impression review of the Hoka Rocket X. Now, I know I'm a little late to the game on this one, but I have been super excited to get my hands on a pair of these and really see how it performs, being Hoka's premier 5K to marathon racing shoe. So let's get into it. Also referred to as the Speed Dagger, the Rocket X is Hoka's lightest and most responsive racer to date. The combination of Hoka's all-new foam paired with a carbon fiber plate makes this shoe a perfect addition to any racer's arsenal. Well, that all sounds really good, but was the shoe up to snuff? Well, we're gonna find that out right now, starting by looking at the stack height. So the Rocket X is coming in at 35 millimeters in the heel and 30 millimeters in the forefoot. 5 millimeter drop, pretty standard. This definitely felt like a 5 millimeter drop. Not in a bad way, not in a good way, but not too much of an issue here, and we'll get into that later in the review. Moving on to the weight of the shoe, the Rocket X is coming in at 7.5 ounces in a size 9. This is an 11.5, and it still feels light as a feather, even though it's heavier than 7.5 ounces, and that's actually pretty heavy for a super shoe, especially compared to something like the Next Percent, but I still think it felt pretty good. It felt pretty lightweight, and it didn't detract from my enjoyment of the shoe. So the fit is true to size, but I'm gonna say I had a little issue just with kind of the midfoot and forefoot lockdown. The lockdown in the ankle area and heel area felt great, and I think that has a lot to do with kind of a stiffer heel collar, but you know, I just never felt like in my first run or two, I just didn't really get comfortable so far with the lacing, and I felt like I was sliding around just a little bit. I have to play with the lacing system a little bit more there, but the lockdown just wasn't there for me yet. And that brings us really well into the upper material. So even though the lockdown wasn't there, that didn't detract from kind of my comfort in the shoe. I think the engineered upper mesh that they're using is actually pretty nice. It's super breathable, and Hoka has been doing that really well with the other racer they made, the Carbon X2. But this shoe, even more breathable than that, and the upper, super lightweight. They also have a semi-gusseted tongue, which I think, again, keeps the tongue from rolling over the top of the midfoot, which is a nice touch considering you don't want to have to deal with that in a longer race or in a harder workout, which is what you're probably wearing this shoe for. As far as the heel counter, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, it's actually pretty stiff compared to some other super shoes out there, but I really liked that. I felt like it held me in well on my first couple runs, and I felt protected in that area. I didn't feel like I was moving side to side at all, and I definitely wasn't sliding out the top or rubbing my Achilles and heel on the back of the shoe. So thumbs up there. Moving on to the midsole. So Hoka is laying their base with a CM EVA midsole foam, and that means, I think, compression molded EVA. It's supposed to be super lightweight and super kind of soft yet responsive. And I'm gonna say this shoe definitely feels a little firmer than other super shoes out there. Again, using the Next Percent example, but I'm thinking it's actually kind of a good thing, especially if you're someone who prefers a firmer kind of landing onto the ground. And even though Hoka's known for being kind of like ultra plush, soft cushioning like in the Clifton or the Bondi, I think they take a nice step back here and allow a runner to get in something that just feels a little more aggressive and responsive off of the ground contact in your toe off. And that has a lot to do, I think, with the carbon plate in here, which is actually pretty aggressive, as you can see. Definitely gonna add a little extra propulsion. And I felt that carbon plate almost immediately in my first couple strides in this shoe. It definitely wants to put you more on your toes and bounce you forward, which is kind of in contrast to the Carbon X2, which I felt like really rewarded you for kind of landing farther back on your foot and using the meta rocker to propel you forward. And along those lines, the Rocket X actually does advertise having Hoka's early stage rocker material to keep you going forward. I just didn't feel it as much in this shoe. But if you're looking for something that puts you on your toes comfortably for a long period of time, that offers a little extra snap, this is gonna be a good option for you. Moving on to the outsole, as you can see, Hoka has some zonal rubber on the outsole that's kind of strategically placed in the forefoot toe area and then also in the heel area. You can definitely tell they're expecting you to spend much of your time on the balls of your feet, considering where they've placed it. There is a considerable amount of exposed EVA, which is gonna detract from durability, but also Hoka's pretty good about having a durable exposed midsole foam on the bottom of the shoe. So that does it for the specs of this shoe. Let's move on to my positives and drawbacks. The positive is gonna be that responsive snappiness of the midsole foam and the carbon plate. I think that mixes really well together and it really wanted to put me on my toes and get me going. I think this is actually a shoe that really can compete with the best super shoes on the market. My drawback is I still am having that issue with the lockdown, especially kind of in the toe box and the midfoot where I feel like I'm sliding around just a little bit. I'm gonna have to play with the lacing a little bit more over my next couple runs in this shoe, but that has been a concern for me in the first couple of runs. Going on to a durability prediction, I'm gonna say you're probably gonna get, maybe like 300 quality miles out of this. I think that's actually a pretty good prediction for a super shoe, especially when you wanna nail some key workouts during your training block, but then also still have a lot of freshness in the foam for your race day. And actually, to be honest, this foam compared to some of the other squishier super shoe foams out there, like going back to the example, the Zoom X foam tends to squish down. I've kind of noticed, maybe around 200 miles. So you can't get quite as many key workouts and long runs in this shoe and then still expect it to perform the same on race day. But with the Rocket X, I think you could probably start nailing your key workouts at the beginning of your marathon training block, and then it'll still be able to show out and show up for you on your race day. So big ups to that resilient foam. It is a little firmer though, so be aware of that. Moving on to what I think this shoe is best for, y'all probably don't gotta guess. It is gonna be best for marathon racing and key marathon workouts. Although they say it's made for racing from 5K all the way to the marathon, I'd probably only really wanna run a marathon in this thing. It's a little heavy for me to wanna race in other events that are shorter, and it's actually a little heavier than a lot of other super shoes out there, but I think it brings a lot to the table in terms of resiliency that might actually put it over the edge over some other shoes that might give you a little more performance, but not as much value. Speaking of value, let's move on to the price of the shoe. Coming in at $180, that's kind of on the lower edge of what super shoes are nowadays, when you see shoes going into the 200s, the mid 200s, and even closer to 300 now, which is kind of wild if you ask me. $180 super shoe is actually pretty affordable generally relative to the rest of the market. Do I wish it was a little cheaper? Of course I do. It's kind of the world we live in. 180 bucks is a lot to pay for something you're gonna wear specifically for racing, but I think it does get you a lot of performance. And as someone who really enjoys performance-oriented shoes, especially on workout days and race days, I think that's a pretty good value for me. Overall, I actually kind of enjoyed my first couple runs in it, barring a couple of the setbacks in the lockdown that I think still need to be dialed in, maybe on my side, but I'll know more when I get to my 50-mile full review of the shoe. But until then, I cannot wait to get more workout miles on the Hoka One Rocket X. That about does it today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in as always. If you've made it this far, I love you, and please feel free to like, subscribe, and smash that bell button below. And until next time, y'all know the drill. Stay healthy, stay chill. Cheers, friends.